Please welcome to the stage Jeff Sermon.
When I was a young boy, I would take walks around the neighborhood with my father. And as I was getting close to 13, he said to me on one of the walks, he goes, "You're getting close to 13, around the same age I was when the Holocaust happened in Poland." And he started telling me the story. He told me about my he said, "Jeffrey, you had your grandfather, Joseph, grandmother Leah, older Aunt Paula, older Uncle Simon, myself, Harold, and two younger uncles, Philip and Morris. Life at that time was tough. It was hard financially for the family to survive. Your grandfather was a shoemaker, grandmother was a stay-at-home mom. It's tough financially. So myself and your Uncle Simon and Philip went to work for your great uncle, Major Jablonski, in Poland. There's no child labor laws back then, and we worked a half a day, went to school half a day. But we learned very valuable skills. We learned how to mix paint. We learned how to use a roller, work quickly and efficiently. And it not only helped the family financially, but it gave us a trade because back then it was very hard to get into a high school or a college, even harder if you were Jewish. So it was partially because for our future. So life was pretty normal though in Poland prior to Germany invading Poland in 1939, which started World War II. Shortly thereafter, I had to wear the Jewish star on our clothing, and shortly after that, we were taken from our home in Starlivice at gunpoint and moved to the Starlivice ghetto. Now, the Starlivice ghetto, the best way I can describe it, Jeffrey, is overcramped, crowded conditions, and food rations. Only rule in the Starlivice ghetto was if you left without special papers and the Nazis saw you, they would shoot you. They would shoot you on sight. Now, the main part of the Starlivice ghetto was a chemical pharmaceutical plant. And I worked there with your Uncle Philip and Simon and Grandpa. Aunt Paula and your grandmother worked for high-ranking Nazi officials. Your Aunt Paula had a small baby boy, and him and Morris went to a nursery there. And, so we worked there, but it was kind of glum, very crowded, and the Nazis would use the drugs, the opioids that they created in the ghetto on Jewish people in the ghetto without any regard if it would kill them or not, or any type of, side effects. And I'm like, "Oh my God, that's terrible, Dad." He goes, "Yeah, it was bad, but it was a pleasure cruise compared to where we were going next." Jeffrey, in 1941, the Germans closed the Starlivice ghetto. And again, we were taken at gunpoint to the cattle cars. And when we got to the cattle car, a cattle car that could probably hold 10, 15 people, they put 15 to 20 times as many of those people in the cattle car. No food, no water, very small spaces to breathe, and couldn't go to the bathroom. It was a 6 to 8 hour ride to Auschwitz. Miraculously, I'm like, "Oh my God, that's terrible, Dad." He goes, "But miraculously, we made it to Auschwitz alive, the entire family." When we get to Auschwitz, the door opens and the Nazi guard said, "How many dead?" The Germans knew that most wouldn't make it to the end of the ride. Miraculously, the entire family made it. So now we're in Auschwitz, and we were told to go in different directions. Myself, Uncle Simon, and Uncle Philip were told to go one direction. Grandma, Grandpa, and Morris were told to go to a separate direction, and Aunt Paula and her baby boy were told to go in one direction. Aunt Paula was holding on to the baby as she was walking, and the Nazi was trying to take the baby away from Aunt Paula, and she was holding on to the baby with all her might as the Nazi was trying to take him. And she didn't see the other Nazi come around and shoot them both. But I did, and so did your uncles. And I'm like, oh my God, that's terrible. And my dad and I were crying. And he said, also at that point, your uncle, your grandfather and grandmother and Morris were told to go to a separate direction, and I never saw him again. One of the people in the camp told me that they were told to take a refreshing shower. And that was Xylon poison, which killed them. So now it's just me, and it's myself and Uncle Philip and Uncle Simon in the camp. And he said, this is how life went in Auschwitz. He said, you get up in the morning about 5:30, 6 a.m., and you go to this large area called the Appelplatz, and you get your daily work details, which were you grab a set of bricks, like just called colonization. You take these bricks and you walk down 14 to 16 flights of stairs underground. You drop the bricks down, you grab another set of bricks, 14 to 16 flights upstairs, 14 to 16 hours a day, no water, no breaks, no food. There was another ritual twice a week in the morning where they would take the number on my arm, and they would take the number down if you took food out of the garbage, if you took a break. There were eyes everywhere. If you took a break, took water, or just for the heck of it, they'd write your number down. Twice a week they would shoot you in front of the entire camp, and twice a week they would hang you also in front of the entire camp. So I'm like, oh my God. So, also after a little while, they had another ritual in the morning where they would call your number, and it was for the crematory detail. It was to burn the dead, like the rest of my family that died, and it was every 2 weeks, and you never saw the people again. So I'm like, oh my, were you scared? He goes, yeah, I was like 15, 16 years old. And he said to me, he goes, well, one day, he goes, I had enough. I got to get out of here. So I got up, and I made a run for it. I didn't think anybody was looking, or so I thought. I didn't see the capo behind me that came up, and he hit me in the back of my head with a steel bar, knocking me unconscious. I was like, oh my God, that's terrible. He goes, no, the capo actually saved my life. He goes, listen, Jeffrey, capos were 3 different types of people in the camp. 1, your garden variety, murderers, rapists, criminals that they were brought there instead of going to prison. 2, political prisoners, and 3, other Jews. They were trying to pit us against each other. Luckily, your uncles and I figured out what capos, who were the best capos, the good and bad ones. And this was a good capo because he could have taken my number down, given it to the high-ranking officials for the daily ritual, or I could have hit the barbed wire. I would have been electrocuted to death. Even if I got out, the guard in front would have shot me. So that capo saved my life. I wouldn't be here today, and neither would you if that capo didn't save my life. And so I was 13. I was like, oh my God, Dad. And he goes, yeah. He goes, and I worried all the time about that ritual with the number. I thought they were going to call me for the crematoria duty. But one day, I was working in the camp. There were 2 parts of Auschwitz. There was Buna and Birkenau. And when Uncle Simon was in another part of the camp, Uncle Philip and I were at that camp, and they brought in other Nazi officials from Theresienstadt. It was a different camp. And they were looking for painters, electricians, carpenters to move to that camp. They needed help. But they didn't trust Jews, Jeffrey, so they put us in a circle. They knew all the trades. They would ask questions to us, and if we tried to, talk our way through it, we didn't know what we were talking about, they would shoot us. And that's what happened to the guy next to me. They shot him in the head right in front of me. And I'm like, were you scared? I'm like, yeah. He goes, but I answered the questions correctly, and your Uncle Philip and I were moved to a different camp. And so after that, we moved to different camps. It was Uncle Philip and I. But I kept thinking to myself, I wonder if Uncle Simon, I wonder if my brother's going to live. I wonder if he's going to make it. But my Uncle Philip and I vowed to protect each other, and we took care of each other. And as we were getting closer to the end of the war, more prisoners, more concentration camp prisoners died from like disease in the camp than any other reason. So now it's getting close to the end of the war, and the system was breaking down, and we would go on these death marches, and we would walk for miles. Now the only rule there, Jeffrey, was if you stopped, the guard would shoot you. But it was such pandemonium, and they were trying to save their own skin. I was very weak. Your Uncle Philip was younger than me, and I would fall, and he would pick me up, and he would carry me for miles until we got to these two boats in harbor, and we were standing in line. This was the end. We're like, we're going to make it. This is it. But Uncle Philip got in the line, and there was too many people, so the guard moved him to the other boat. And what your Uncle Philip and I didn't know is that boat was used as a decoy ship by the Germans. It had a Nazi swastika at the front of it, and it was littered with explosives. We didn't know. So we're going out to harbor, and I watched your uncle, the English thought it was an enemy ship, and they bombed it, killing your Uncle Philip. There's no way he could have survived. Now, after everything, Jeffrey, after we were together, after he dragged me for miles, after all of it, he's gone. He's gone, and I'm alone. I'm 19 years old. I weighed 83 pounds, and I'm in a DP. I'm in a displaced persons camp, and I kept on thinking to myself, I wonder if your Uncle Simon's alive. I wonder if my brother's alive, and I'm trying to get better. One day, a lady came. She was my teacher in Poland. And she came, and there were people that were trying to reunite, like family members after the war. And we reminisced and we hugged. And she said, I saw your uncle in a different camp. He was alive. Your Uncle Simon was alive. And it chokes me up just thinking about it. Anyway, he was alive. And when you feel better, you go see him. So I started feeling better. I go see him, and we reunited in 1945. Yeah, and so miraculously, I found my brother. It's 1945, and we're in Germany of all places. And we get a job at this. We get jobs at this underground illegal German officers club, and our job was to smuggle alcohol and cigarettes into the police officers club and serve it to the officers, which we did, and they were great. It was for the best time of my life up until that point. We were young, we were in our 20s, and we were together. But as we're getting to 1945, there's the Israeli Independence War. And so getting close to 48, I was all set. I'm going to go to Israel, fight for independence. So Jews have a place to go if this ever happened again. I was all ready. And your Uncle Simon was going to go, but he was already dating your Aunt Lucia, who was also a survivor, as you know, and he couldn't go, and we were yet separated again. So I go to Israel in 1948, fighting the war. Your uncle stays in Germany till 1951 and moves here to Detroit. And it was really hard back then. After the war, I was in Israel to 1953, and it was hard. But your uncle, through some organizations here in Michigan, was able to find relatives in Toronto. So in 1956, I immigrated to Toronto. I lived with a cousin. We painted houses. And we were close, about 4 hours, and we would write letters and meet in Windsor. And finally, in 1956, I immigrated to Detroit, Michigan, and reunited with your Uncle Simon. We opened up a two-man painting business. As you know, I work with them now. And in 1958, I was at the barber shop, and I saw this woman walking by, and I'm like, I asked the barber, do you know her? I'd like to have her number. He goes, yeah, she babysits for my kids. Her name's Sally. And I got her number. And as you know, 9 months later, we were married. And shortly thereafter, in 1960, we go to a party at your cousin Shell. and it was his birthday party, and he had a surprise. He wanted to introduce us to his non-Jewish German fiance as soon as like 15 years after I was liberated. And, you know, at some point in the evening, I had to break the ice. I walked up to her. I put my arm around her. I said I would love her because she was family. Maybe it was the goodwill that the officer showed me in Germany. And that cemented our relationship going forward. And so, you know, in closing, my father was my hero, mentor, and my best friend. He had a way of looking at things. He was so positive, and he had a way of lifting people up. And it's an honor to tell his story and his life. A truly remarkable man. Thank you. Thank you so much.
I thought it was good. Thank you. Jeff, that was fantastic.